Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika la wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. I thought I'd do a quick video after debating with various factions of the Fiji election parties, electorate parties, whether it's Adolpa or Fiji First or any other parties. That it dawned on me that what are the Muslims doing? Should the Muslims actually be voting in an election? It's an important question, especially given the momentous occasion when after years or decades of a military dictatorship, Fiji is going to almost a very first of its kind in democratic elections. So it dawned on me that I should probably do a 5-minute video on something that I've been studying for over a decade. Now, essentially, the Muslim, he seeks the hukm of Allah in anything that he does. Anything that he does. So when it comes to eating, drinking, when it comes to going somewhere, visiting people, participating in any occasion or any sort of environment, we seek the hukm of Allah in everything that we do. So consider the situation where we walk into a supermarket. Now all of us will have to look at the ingredients of what we buy. When we pick up that packet of biscuits, we start looking at the ingredients. We start looking for whether or not there's gelatin in it, whether there's animal fat in it, whether or not there's anything in it. Anything that will make it haram. Importantly, we don't look at the nutritional values. That is, we don't look at the allergy contents. Does it have peanuts in it? Does it have eggs in it? And so on and so forth. We don't look at the calories that will gain from it to determine the halal and haram. We may look at it, the nutritional values, for a personal choice, but not in terms of what makes it halal or haram. The halal and haram will be in the ingredients. Likewise, when it comes to something like a democratic elections, we have to look at the ingredients of what a democracy is. So essentially, when we start looking at what a democracy is, first up, we need to understand that it's a system. It's not a set of values, it's a system of government. A system of government. The word democracy itself comes from two Greek words, demos and kratos, which together means people power. People power. So when we start to look at this system of government, we understand that the West, when they came out the age of church rule and secularized their nation states, they looked for a system of government that would be something that would be new and fit into this secular model. So they took this system of democracy, morphed it into something that suits their own masses, and imposed it on their nation states. So democracy in itself is a system of government. Now what does it entail? It entails this. That firstly, there are three essential ingredients to this democracy. Number one, there is the judiciary. Number two, there is the legislature. And the legislature is what we call the upper house and the lower house, or the Senate. And thirdly, it's the winning body, or the executive body. That's the winning party that will rule. The main role of these three essential ingredients is to, number one, introduce laws, number two, debate laws, and number three, pass laws in parliament. So effectively, they have a law-making role. And when they start making these roles, we now understand that in the parliament, when they're making these laws and order for society, what they're doing is effectively making themselves sovereign lawmakers. They become sovereign when it comes to making laws. Straight out I will say, democracy is therefore a system of kufr, and participating in it is at least haram. At least haram. From the Islamic perspective, we start to take the verses to superimpose itself on the reality. And the verses that come are many. But first of all, let's look at the reality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the that of Allah. Amongst His 99 names, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is known as Al-Hakam. Al-Hakam means He is the lawgiver. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also known as Malik al-Mulk, the owner of the sovereign, of all dominions. So no one can supersede Allah. And that should really be enough. For us Muslims, that should really be enough. When we look at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the sovereign lawmaker, and we look at democracy as a system of government that superimposes people as sovereign when it comes to lawmaking, straight away we can see the kufr here already. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala emphasizes in many ayat. In Surah Al-Yusuf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "In al-hukmu illa lillah." Verily, the sovereignty of hukum, sovereignty of laws, rules, belongs to Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says in Surah Al-A'raf, "Ala lahu al-khalq wal-amr." That means, in rhetorical form, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking, does not the command and the creation belong to Allah? In other words, the creation and the command belongs to Allah. The khalq and the amr belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in other words, Allah is asserting Himself. Ala lahu khalq wal amr. To me belongs the creation and the laws about the creation. Whether it's the sun and the moon and what time they rise and what time they set, whether it's the night, alternation of the night and day, whether it's the tides in the ocean or what have you. And likewise, like all creations, human beings are also a creation. And so Allah Azza wa Jal has revealed laws to govern all of our affairs. As Allah says in another ayat, وَنَزَّلْنَا عَلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ تِبْيَانًا لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ. That Allah has revealed in this Quran an exposition of everything. But Allah Azza wa Jal also emphasizes in other ayat in Surah Al-Ma'idah, where He subhanahu wa ta'ala says in 3 different places that whosoever does not rule by what Allah has revealed, they're either kafir, dhalim, or fasiq. And here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. And further on it goes on and says in another verse, same thing, وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ or وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. So you're either a kafir, a zalim, or a fasiq, an open sinner. What does this mean? All of these, the reality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the verses that I've quoted, that means that Allah is the supreme lawgiver, supreme organizer of affairs, and not mankind. So straight out, democracy as a system of government is ruled out. Ruled out because it places mankind as the sovereign lawmakers to make, debate, and impose laws in a people-imposed parliament. So what does this mean? The verses that put Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as sovereign means that secularism has no place in Islam. Secularism, in a nutshell, means that you separate religion from life's affairs. Meaning you take God and you put Him in a mosque or a church or a synagogue, whatever, and He has no right to say what mankind says about the affairs of man. So you separate God from man's affairs. And that's kufr. That idea is kufr in itself. And secondly, when we start to look at the fact that Allah Azza wa Jal has imposed us to rule by what He has revealed, meaning the Sharia, He places the Sharia over and above any man-made laws, any man-made systems. And so when sovereignty belongs to Allah, then sovereignty belongs to the Sharia. And what that means, all of it encapsulated together, that this system of government is un-Islamic, meaning it's kufr. And so engaging in it, participating in it, supporting it, or doing anything about it, voting for a government that will pose itself superior to Allah, is at the least haram. At the least it's haram. Because you are taking your vote and not just giving it to anyone for your rights or your personal existence in a society. No, what you're doing, what your vote is doing is placing a party and a group of people over and above Allah as a set of lawmakers. A set of lawmakers. And that in a nutshell is haram. We cannot do that. As Muslims, we should abstain from it. Yes, I understand this opens a lot of questions. Some people may say that this is one person's opinion. Fine, I can understand that. Then go to an alim and ask the alim for what is his opinion. And make sure he tells you not about the nutritional values, that voting will get you this or that or that or that, will get you these benefits, will get you an education, will get you business propositions. No. Look at the essential ingredients. Tell him to talk about essential ingredients. If my opinion is weak, if my opinion is wrong, then where is it weak or wrong? In understanding the reality, the essential ingredients, or understanding the verses of Allah. And over and above that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you differ amongst yourself, then refer it to Allah and His Messenger. فَإِن تَنَزَعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ. Meaning that if you differ amongst yourself in anything, then refer it back to Allah and His Messenger. Meaning, refer it back to the Quran and the Sunnah. Meaning, you need evidences from the Quran and the Sunnah to make your opinion stronger. We don't just say in Islam, this is his opinion, put it to one side, and then I'll go about doing my own way, without reference to the Quran and Sunnah. No, we cannot do that. So we need to refer back to the Sharia. And if there is a Sharia position that's stronger in terms of the textual evidences, the verses that I've quoted, and in terms of the reality, then that will be a stronger opinion. So I say this once again categorically, that democracy is a system of government that is kufr, it has no place in Islam, and supporting it is at the very least haram. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.